it's 1 o'clock for us. So, which is always crazy. I don't know. Like, feel like it's just, I guess, more weird. Like, if you're like on a call with someone from like Australia, and it's literally like they've already had the whole day.
Right. We
But
haven't done that yet. We haven't had any Australian bands on.
Nope.
well, maybe that's next on the agenda. That's
Thought
even more of a nightmare for
Yeah.
scheduling, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd love to get Wind Waker on. They're from Australia, right, Jess?
I think so. I had this conversation with my brother yesterday, and he was like, I really like Parkway Drive. And I'm like, yeah, I think they're from Australia.
Mm.
Yep.
And I was like, maybe sometime we can get them on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we actually saw them, didn't we, at Bloodstock?
We did, yeah.
They were really good.
They were wicked. Because I'd heard for as big as they are, I didn't really know much about them. Hadn't listened to much, but I just heard that their live show was meant to be like ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
And then seeing it, it was like, I get it.
Yeah, I think it's quite telling, isn't it? Like when you say like, oh, don't really know any songs, like not really like waiting for any specific songs, but like that you can still watch it for the whole like hour and a half or however long the set was and be like, wow, this is crazy. Like
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it was wicked, to be fair.
Have you ever seen Starset?
No.
They're from the UK, I believe. They're coming here, and my brother's like, if you want to come to the show with me and your nephew, who's 11, he wants to take him because it's like one of his favorite bands. And they have a really, it looks like a really interesting I can't even say that word. Chris, can you say that word for me?
Theatrical.
Theatrical. It's too early. It's too early.
Yeah.
Theatrical, like stage setup and everything. So it could be an interesting show. I might go.
I think it's kind of cool when you're like, I guess if you don't know a band and you have like no expectations and just like see where it goes, is sometimes
Right.
quite interesting.
Yeah, it helps when if the live show, like I say, if it feels like a show.
Yeah.
Because you
Right.
go and see the band first and foremost because the music's good. But if you don't know the band, then if the show is entertaining on all fronts, do you know what I mean? Then
Yeah.
it'll, even if you're maybe not a fan of the music, you're going to be like, I mean, the show looks amazing.
Yeah.
Right. I could definitely see that.
Yeah.
Well, we should get started because I think time is a factor for Chris today. So
It is.
Cool.
if you could just please introduce yourselves and the role you play in the band.
Yeah, I'm Steff and I am the vocalist.
And I am Jamie, play guitar, and we should mention that it's the band is Giant Walker.
The band is Giant.
Yes, we are here with Giant Walker. So how did Giant Walker come to be, and what is your origin story?
Well, it depends on if we're going for like the full origin story or the
long story long or long story short.
Yeah, pretty much. So for a kind of slightly slimmed down version, basically me and Jamie have been playing together in a band since 2012. And basically that was originally back up in Newcastle. So we were both like 16 at the time. And we just like started off just doing like covers and stuff and just like loved performing and kind of honing the craft, if you will. And then we decided to move down south to go to university. And we kind of changed a few members and it was a little bit like see what's happening kind of thing as we kind of were trying to write some originals. And we basically ended up at the end of university, or like to I guess middle to end, we ended up with the kind of lineup that we've got now, with Alex and Jordan, who ironically are both also from Newcastle, but Alex we met in the south. And then we, I guess, playing at uni, like doing lots of gigs, And we kind of basically, since the original band that me and Jamie were part of, that we didn't actually start, ironically enough, we just kind of kept the same name. So that kind of just continued basically, like over the time, even though it obviously quite dramatically changed since when we first started it. And basically, so we'd released a couple of EPs, like done a few different things, and then over lockdown, we kind of
decided
reflecting on a lot of stuff, and
decided that we had kind of outgrown the band in a lot of senses. Like, it was in essence a high school band, and that we had just rolled with for ages, and then members had changed, and then we realized at that point that it wasn't the same thing anymore. So we just decided, let's call it what it is, draw a line in the sand, and just start from scratch with a new name and all the rest of it. And that's kind of where Giant Walker started. So it was a lockdown baby.
Yeah. It was kind of almost, I feel like it's like the first, everything up until that point was kind of us like exploring, experimenting, learning a hell of a lot. And like you say, it kind of evolved quite a bit. And I feel like, it kind of got to that point where we were like, I literally, I was just in our living room, like all of us around, like drinking tea, whatever. And I was kind of just like, at some point during lockdown, like, like we basically had intentions, or had pretty much written an album. And I was kind of just like casually was like, oh, like this is probably the last time we have to like change the name. And then suddenly it kind of just, I think I'd like set like a little
as soon as someone said it out loud, everyone was like, yeah,
in everyone's mind. And then we
just
kind of like, so it was quite a long time coming, I guess. But so that's, I guess that wasn't that short, but that's quite a long.
It's definitely a long story long. But
quite a long version of events.
So I have a general question unrelated to music. Now we've interviewed a couple bands from the UK at this point, and I've heard the term moving to the South. And of course, here in the States, there's like a pretty solid demarcation line of like when you're in the North versus South. Is there something like that over there? Like, is there like a town like, oh, once you cross that town line, like now you're in the South kind of thing?
100%, but depending on whether you're in the North or the South, people will tell you whether it's different things. I don't know if that's the same for the US as well.
It is, like here in the US, like the North, I would say if you're in the North, we'll definitely say like, oh, once you cross into like Virginia or North Carolina, you're in the South. People in the South are like, no, it's definitely Maryland or something a little more north. It's.
I feel like it's not a straight line for sure.
Yeah, I guess we're a bit more vertical in the UK, but yeah, there's definitely like this idea of like above London is basically like Watford Gap is the Southerners' idea of North, but for a Northerner, I would say like this is really controversial. A lot of people think of Sheffield as the North, but that's definitely the Midlands. Anything from like Manchester.
See, it's an ongoing debate. Clearly, it's one of those. Yeah.
And then if you're in Scotland, then everything is the South.
I mean, I think the best way to put it is, I think no one would disagree that where we come from is considered the North.
Yeah,
that's northern, but on all fronts, basically. Northeast. Except if you're
in Scotland. However, it's definitely Northern England, because Newcastle is basically like the final city before the border to Scotland. So
they're just the way north. They're way north.
Yeah, it is far. Yeah. Having said that, like it's a 6-hour drive to where we are now. So in comparison to the US, like it's nothing. Do you know what I mean? Like it's.
And you also scroll through about like 17 different accents in that time.
Yes.
So you travel an hour, each sounds different. Travel an hour, completely different again.
Yeah, we've heard that too, that the accents are definitely different, just like an hour away from each other.
Yeah.
100%, yeah.
And sometimes like even smaller, I'd say, like in certain places, but yeah. Crazy.
Wow. So I did read that the song Past the Peak came from an article that was read. Have you found inspiration from any other unexpected places?
Yeah, I would say like there's quite a lot of like different takes of stuff, like, so for instance, like TV shows maybe that we've watched and films and that kind of thing as well.
Yeah, I think something that, because I've kind of like in some of the newer stuff that we've been working on, like I've tried to get a lot more involved in the like lyric writing as well, which is completely new, and I've found it like really really inspiring just taking on that challenge, and rather than writing about things that I'm going through personally or anything like that, because I feel like my life's kind of not interesting enough to draw from like really deep emotional experiences and stuff. So it's kind of like, I kind of think of it as like, if you're writing a story like in English, you would you wouldn't really like write about personal experiences that much. You would like follow a creative kind of line and come up with the most extravagant story you can to make it as interesting as possible. I kind of think of it the same way. Like I imagine scenarios or like a scenario or characters talking to each other and wondering about and just writing about that as a song idea, or
and then I guess it could be like how you would like putting yourself in that scenario and like relating that to other
like
things.
Living like imagining like vicariously through these characters how you would feel in that situation, and then be like, oh, I'd feel like this, and then write about it. And it's kind of, I guess in the end it kind of comes back to you, because you put yourself in those situations, and then it's like it still ends up being genuine in some sort of way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was quite hard to articulate, but I think I got there.
And then the first Giant Walker album that was written during COVID, from what I understand, correct? And that was kind of it sounded like it was written, and then when it was recorded, you all came together. I think I read that you were kind of glad to hear that it all worked together for the first time as you're there recording. How's that process different now? I would imagine it's a lot different, maybe closer to how it was prior to COVID in the other band iteration, or has it even evolved since then?
Yeah, it's definitely took on like a combination of different things. I would say, like we're kind of in a really fortunate position to be able to kind of demo things out pretty close to what they're going to sound like in the finished thing, and so that, to be honest, like that means that it's almost like the songwriting approach in itself of like Jamie will pretty much demo the entire song out really,
but not only that, it helps you kind of because I think we're confident enough musicians where I feel like upon hearing a demo you can kind of tell whether it's doable or not, because it's quite easy when it's in the demo phase to kind of keep pushing an idea until it's really hard for a band to pull it off live without trickery and stuff. And I think we're very much in the camp of, we like to keep it like sounding like it's just a group of 4 people playing it. So in essence, it helps us basically just self-produce it before. It's essentially pre-production. That's what it is. Like all the demoing we do beforehand is essentially just pre-production that we do ourselves. And then when we go to the studio, it means that we can spend like 7 to 8 days recording, 8 or 9 songs, and then everyone knows that part anyway. There's no extra time wasted on mainly experimentation.
Mainly just from like a budget point of view as well, because like obviously like studio time is super expensive. So yeah, the songs are kind of already realized, and there might be like a few tweaks here and there like in the studio, but for the most part it's like pretty close to what it's going to be like. So I would say in terms of process, like it's actually probably very similar to what we did over lockdown, which is quite interesting. Because previous to that it would be very much like just jamming in a room. And now basically our drummer Alex is still up in Newcastle. He moved back up actually during COVID, and so he's still back up there. So obviously jamming in a room kind of does happen, but not anywhere near as often. So it forces us to kind of work more remotely in that sense anyway. But yeah, I guess the main difference between this album and the last album is just in terms of how much, what would you say, like how much time we each had to like hone our own parts, if that makes sense, from the demos. Because like, for instance, Alex in the first album, because it was lockdown and he didn't have a studio set up like he does now. He didn't have anywhere to play the songs, so it was pretty much like the first time when we went in the studio, he was like basically replicating the demos.
Well, he hadn't played. He hadn't played drums in like 6 months.
Yeah.
Because you couldn't get. I mean, he'd probably hit the practice pads and stuff a bit.
Yeah, pretty much.
But I mean, any drummer will know that that's just not the same.
Yeah.
As orchestrating your way around an entire kit.
Yeah.
And then,
so I think in itself that was quite a stressful process, like especially for Alex, pretty more so than everyone else. But yeah, so I think with this album, it was very much kind of like we all had the time to really
practice.
Yeah, to really practice, make sure that we're not taking too much time in the studio.
Yeah. So during lockdown, were you guys still a band called Zero?
Yeah. So we were basically up until, well, I guess it was at some point during lockdown that we decided. In fact, when we recorded the album, we were still as Zero.
Yeah, we had the final mixes and masters back, and then kind of it was upon reviewing everything. We had the artwork, we had the audio, we had everything in place, and we're like, this doesn't seem like, this just seems like something else.
Yeah.
So that was what kind of changed it.
And then you guys released your full length in 2022, right? Am I right?
Yeah. So we were kind of sat on that first album for a little while, to be fair, because we recorded it in 21.
As Giant Walker, I should say.
Yeah.
And then you did a live version as well in 2023.
Yeah.
How was that, doing like a live version versus doing just a studio recorded one?
In some ways, it was easier.
Yeah.
Because
it's much
we've kind of always,
and we played it a lot.
We had played it a lot live already. We've been playing together for quite a while as well. So playing live together feels quite comfortable. I guess, just it was hard in other ways because it was a freezing cold, empty warehouse. And it was intense because we had to do, the way that worked was we were there for two days. Two evenings.
We couldn't shoot until it got dark, basically.
Yeah, so we were there for 2 evenings.
So it's like from 6 onwards.
Yeah, recorded like 5 tunes the first day and then 4 the next day.
And we did like 3
we did like 3 run-throughs of every song and then basically chose the best one.
Yeah.
And rolled with that. And so it was a lot more pressure.
Yeah.
100%. There was a chance, because it was live, there's a chance that you come away with something that's just doesn't sound great.
Yeah.
Because of the time restraints and all the rest of it. Obviously the camera crew there as well. Like, you're like, oh, I hope I actually can do this. Otherwise you just wasted everyone's time.
Yeah. I would say from my point of view, it's quite tricky, I think, like vocals wise. I don't know, I feel like we've kind of like almost evolved to hearing everything perfect. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And it's kind of then to be like, okay, this isn't going to be that, and like that, I'm okay with that. Is I think one of those things where like I kind of love that about other things that I listen to, but like when it's yourself, it kind of feels like it's such a big deal to be like, right, well, this is it, like that's how it's going to be, like that note's flat and this this isn't great.
Live is an absolute representation of you, of the band. Studios, like it's its own thing.
Yeah.
And rightly so. Obviously you want to make something that's,
the best it can be.
I guess in a way, like a live version of your of your music is going to be very unapologetic and very raw, because you don't really do any mixing because it's live.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
You're not gonna change the sound because you want it to be live.
Yeah.
So I could see that.
It's the band with the clothes off, basically. That's it.
Yes, you guys are naked.
Come on.
So now that it's 2024, what has Giant Walker been working on these days?
Well, we have been working on another project. Am I allowed to say that it's an album? Probably.
Another full-length.
By the time this comes out, by the time this podcast interview comes out, I guess it will be kind of a bit more announced.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we worked on, well, writing wise, that was kind of all last year, really.
Yeah.
And then we were just in the studio in January. Worked with Chris Coulter again, who we worked with on the first album, which is really great. We got an awesome studio called The Arch in Southport, yeah. Which is like a converted church. But it was the first one that we done where it was like, because last time we basically just commuted to the studio every day, whereas this time it was residential, so we basically had a bunk room, which is absolutely hilarious. So good, such a good time. But yeah, so that was in January, and then this release is gonna obviously be a lot quicker than last time, because we were sat on the first album for such a long time before it was released. Whereas this time it's gonna be much quicker. So we've got first single is coming out on the 5th of April. Which we'll be announcing tomorrow. So I'm guessing by the time this comes out, it will be already announced.
Give you a clue as to when it was filmed.
Might be out in the world. But yeah, so that's first single. And yeah, the other singles to follow basically from there.
So talking about more music, I really love the song Past the Peak and Katoomba. They're my favorites off your 2022 album. Out of all the songs you have released so far, what songs have been the hardest to write and get right in the mixing process?
To be honest, I think Past the Peak probably was one of those. From a writing point of view, that felt like it took absolutely ages. I know you gloss over it now once it's done.
Did it?
It did. It took forever. Like
vocally,
I feel like
vocally maybe. I think musically it was done for a while though.
Musically, it was probably done quite quickly, but yeah, the vocal part on the top, I was kind of wrestling with that for a while. I had a few different iterations. The same with Inertia. I think probably like for me, the like slower, kind of less.
The more space.
The more space. The more thought.
Well, the more space, the more impact every note has. The more important every note is. So I guess you kind of labour over the melody a bit more, and when it's kind of like a bit more raucous and it's a bit more like energetic, you kind of like
Fact and Fiction.
Oh, here we go.
Fact and Fiction came together really quickly. Katoomba was actually the first single that we had written.
Yeah, Katoomba was the first song written for the first album.
Yeah.
So that was done for. That was done for.
Musically, off the first album, the hardest one to.
I'd say by the time you get like I don't think I can pick one in particular. It's more like just by the end of the writing process. You kind of like, you've got a few songs that you're like, I just want to finish these and get them out, and then as soon as you get into that mindset, it just becomes so much harder because you're coming from it from the angle of I need to finish this.
Yeah,
I'm getting fed up with,
rather than like it'll be done when it's ready kind of thing.
I'm getting fed up with listening to these ideas now. They need to be songs, and I think the ones that come quickly are usually the ones that you like more as well, because you don't have that love-hate relationship with them.
Yeah, Optophobia was a very quick one. That was like literally a weekend, the whole thing.
Well, I dreamt it.
Yeah,
literally.
That was so funny.
Yeah, the only time it's ever happened. I woke up and I dreamed myself playing a riff, and I was like, I can't believe I can remember that. Like, I literally knew straight away. Went straight in here in the room, recorded it, and then like half an hour later, the whole song was like done musically, at least, not vocally, but the whole
but
thing was.
We finished the vocals over that.
But that was the last song written
that
for
was the last song
for the album.
for the
Opnophobia was the last one. So
Wouldn't it be nice if like songs could just come to you in dreams all the time?
Oh man.
Yeah.
It's
makes you wonder how many songs you've had in a dream that like.
I've had a few.
Gone.
I know for a fact I've had a few like where I've dreamt it, but obviously later on you're sitting there, you're like, I had a dream about a song, and then you're like, I can't remember it, so it doesn't matter.
That's so sad.
That song wasn't meant to be then.
Yeah. R.I.P.
I want to back up real quick. I don't think we touched it. Where did the band name Giant Walker come from?
Yeah, so obviously we kind of planted the seed of everyone's mind of should we change the name before we release the album, and we were literally having like weekly Zooms with everyone bringing like their best like
band names,
band and album title and all of this, and like yeah, we were kind of going round in circles for a while, to be honest. I think it probably took like a good few months to decide.
Well, you got to get it right. You don't, because once it sticks, it's like you've got to spend time on that. I think.
But it was actually Jordan, our bass player's contribution. He was saying we were looking at like different like mythical creatures. And
yeah, we were looking at like because I think I was looking at things like. I was looking at creatures and stuff, like folklore creatures, like the Jabberwocky and the Tantrabobus and stuff like that, like, and just weird like monsters that didn't exist, but or maybe they did. But yeah, and then I was talking to Jordan about it, and he was like, "Oh, that's wicked. I'll like." And then he was at work on his like break or something, just looking through stuff. And he just out of nowhere thought of the idea of like a giant
being walked
by like a little girl or something.
Mm-hmm.
So rather than a dog walkout, it would be a giant walkout. But it's like he just liked the idea of like a really big giant on like a leash being walked around by a little girl. Like the imagery was like quite cool. And then. Yeah, there was a couple of objections to the name Giant Walker, firstly.
Yeah, Alex.
At first, it takes a while, but then he was like, yeah, no, I like it.
It's really hard to get a balance as well of like, in like the connotations of a name, like, can be really difficult. I think it's one of those things that you start looking at other band names and realising that you actually don't like the band name, you just like the band, and then it almost makes you like the name. So, yeah, it was quite interesting. But, yeah, that was how it came about.
When I think of giant walkers, I think of like the Iron Giant.
Yeah.
Or there was these giant walking like beasts in a anime I really like. I think it was the anime Nausicaa, if I remember. I don't know if you even watch anime, but they had like these giant creatures that had like laser beams that come out of their mouth, and they were giant walkers. So I kind of think of those things when I think of giant walker.
Kind of the idea. So.
There's also a bad guy in the Sonic the Hedgehog series called a Giant Walker.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Oh right.
Maybe we're just really big Sonic the Hedgehog.
Maybe. It all comes from somewhere, so
right? Never know.
Yeah, you never know.
Jess, you want to tell them the imagery that came to your mind when you heard?
I was like, giant walker, like an old person gets a walker. It's just like a really big version of a giant walker.
You know what it is? I remember now that was my first thought, and that's why I was like, I really don't like it. But
yeah, I work at a thrift store, so I see like walkers come in all the time, and I was like, giant walker, like a giant medical walker? That's an interesting name. But I knew it wasn't from that. I was like, it can't be that. So
now we were going to call the band Giant Zimmer Frame, but
yeah, it didn't quite have the same ring.
Didn't have the same ring, so Giant Walker.
So if you had to describe your music to a random grandma on the street, how would you describe Giant Walker to that grandma?
To a random grandma.
Yeah, we are a rock and roll band. If it's a giant grandma. Giant grandma. Yeah. No, if it's an old woman, that's how I would describe it. If it was, I just be like, yeah, it's a rock and roll band, man. Have a listen. To be honest, if it was, I'd probably describe it that way seriously to most people, just because I think it's so hard, and I believe also quite pointless to try and describe to someone what a band sounds like without saying, "Oh, it sounds like X, Y, and Z had a baby," and it's kind of just like.
Then you put into people's mind already of like what they should expect.
Exactly.
And I kind of think then it's like I'm totally guilty of this myself as well. But like it's one of those things, isn't it? When you listen to a band, you're like, oh, it sounds a bit like this. It's like, I don't know.
You would also like to think that you sound like the perfect amalgamation of all your influences, so that's how you would describe it to someone, and then they listen to it and they're like, "Yeah, I don't really hear that actually."
Yeah.
So yeah,
it's quite interesting. We've had like quite a lot of different like comments on like
like a lot of people.
Sounds like,
yes.
But I think it's like one of those things where like they hear bands that they know, and we hear the bands that we are influenced by. So it's like it's definitely a bit of a mashup of different kind of ideas, but that almost like then lends itself to more interpretation. It's definitely something that we struggle with, I think, in terms of like labeling it.
I think that the label we went with was heavy progressive rock, because we didn't really think, especially some of the newer stuff, we didn't really think it had a metal
edge.
It wasn't.
But then
as
it was quite
as...
interesting because then we got like so for the first album we got a review in Metal Hammer, which is really cool. But they basically
said progressive
like,
metal.
Progressive metal, and then we're like, oh, this is like controversial. I don't know. It's like it's quite funny to see how like different people label it. I guess I almost wish we could just get rid of all of our own input and just see what people come up with. Because I think you kind of interpret it in your own way.
It's interesting like that, isn't it? Because if you describe it as like a combination of a bunch of different bands and then they listen and they disagree, they're kind of let down and then they'll dismiss. But also if you're putting a genre label on it, people are going to quickly dismiss and be like, well, I don't like any of those. Why would I give it a listen? So it's always tough. So I like the general description of we're a rock and roll band.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone can fall into the rock and roll, So, I mean, you're just a rock and roll band and take what you want from it.
Yeah, exactly. Rock and roll, that could be Elvis, or it could be...
It's true.
Like, you know what I mean? Or it could be someone a lot heavier than that. I don't know why I can't think of anyone else but Elvis. But like Queens of Stone Age or something as well. Right. Like you would... rock and roll, like rock and roll. Or the grunge kind of side of it as well. Like, all just rock and roll at the end of the day.
So getting off the subject of trying to, say what your genre would be, what have been some of your greatest accomplishments as a band so far?
That's a good question.
Do you have like a bucket list of something you want to accomplish in the next few years?
I think it's quite easy to fall into the trap of being like, oh, this would be cool. But
I mean, you'd be lying if you didn't say you had like you had kind of some aspirations of playing certain festivals or touring with certain bands, playing certain venues or whatever. But I think the thing I'm probably most proudest
just roll with it.
The most proudest of is probably just the fact that we've been playing music as a 4-piece for
almost
near enough 10 years now, and we still all really like each other, and we have a full-length album, about to have another one. And again, like, those are the things where, like, for me at least, when in 30 years time, probably once the band is disbanded by that point. I mean, you never know, but you know what I mean.
You never know.
You never know, but those are the things you can look back on when you're sat in your living room and you've got a shelf with all the CDs on. You can be like, oh, there's 2, 3, 4 full-length albums up there of like, and they are bodies of work. Like, it's the same as
and also like kind of representative of like the time of like when you wrote them as well, which is kind of cool. It's almost like a
like we've basically immortalized ourselves in for us and for whoever else wants to listen to it, I guess. But I think again, you always do it for yourself first.
Anyway.
I
think from my point of view as well, like just like you were saying, like the fact that like obviously we've been together for like nearly 10 years and like we still really genuinely like are great
Enjoy
friends.
the process and like
Love
good friends and
spending time with each other and like tours and the studio, like even it's just such a good time. And like I don't know, I hope that kind of comes across that like we just really love playing together and like vibing off each other. I think is really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine that's pretty important as a band to actually like each other and be friends and understand and know one another. We just had an interview with a band that broke up about 20 years ago. Now they're back writing music again. And they were talking about now that they're back 20 years later, like when they were a band 20 years ago, they didn't really know each other. They just kind of like toured. And then they didn't even know where one another was born. And like now, like the conversations 20 years later, they're learning about each other. So I would imagine it's a pretty important piece to actually like each other, 10 years later and
Right.
be friends and have those connections versus we've had it put by a couple bands before. A lot of bands are just kind of working together. They don't really like each other necessarily.
Right. They don't hang out besides when they're on tour. Like they don't hang out outside of, I guess you would say, work in general.
I was gonna say I think there's quite a lot of bands that are probably in that situation of just like, oh yeah, this guy who's in the band like that, like you say, like you don't really know them or like,
well,
yeah, it's quite interesting.
I just think considering as well, like it's so easy to forget that I always consider myself really, really lucky to just be like you speak to some musicians in general who really, really want to start a band, or like I teach guitar as well, and some of my students will be like, oh, I'm just like I want to find people to play with, and you kind of realize like, hang on, like some people just can't even find other musicians to play music with, even though they want to. So I don't take
fact that we've got like
I don't take for granted that I'm in a band with all my best mates and who just happen to be really good musicians, and that we all, and you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of factors that just lined up.
That we're all kind of like on the same wavelength as well. Like that's like musically and kind of
there's barely any disagreements with you hear of so many bands that end because of musical differences.
And because of musical differences.
Maybe
give it a few years.
Who knows? Like I say, you don't want to rule anything out. It's like well, you never know. Someone might just be like, you know what, I want to do a techno album. Goodbye. But it's rare. It's probably not going to happen. But
you talking about your student made me think about like instead of like Christian mingle, maybe they have to have something called musician mingle, where you can find other musicians to start bands or play with. I
don't know if it's a thing. If it's a thing in the US or just in the UK, but there is a website called Join My Band.
Oh yeah, Join My Band. The thing is though as well, like it's so hard to, because it sounds overkill, but being in a band is like being in a relationship.
Yeah.
It's like
it takes work.
It takes a lot. It does take a lot of work, but then once you're in the right one, it's kind of effortless. But it obviously takes a while to find that right mix of personalities, and because there'll be nothing worse than being like, oh, I really connect musically with this person, we write really good music, and then a personality trait reveals itself, right, and you just really dislike you now, because liking someone personally, regardless of that musical taste, if you can't stand being in the same room as them, then that's inevitably going to affect the music you write together. So yeah, it is important.
Yeah, know what else takes a lot of work like that? A podcast, right, Jess?
Sometimes it is a lot of work.
we fun quick story. We have never met in person. We've known each other going on 20 years though. But yeah, we kind of started this MySpace, we think.
Nice.
But yeah, she used to have a online music magazine, and then years later decided to revive it. And I'm not huge on social media. I'll pop in like if I want to post something, and then I'll just jump right back out. So unless something is on like the top part of my feed, I really don't see it. And I just happened to see one day that she posted something like, oh, maybe I should revive Jam as a podcast. And I commented like, need a co-host, haha, like as a joke. And that's how this started. So
Hey, that's crazy.
I was
Yeah.
like, yeah, I kind of do need a co-host. I don't want to do all the work by myself.
But we've gone through so many iterations and small changes that yeah, it even this it is a lot of work. I would imagine having more than two people like you do usually in a band is even more. We've worked it out sort of, right, Jess?
Yeah, we're good. We're good.
Don't
We
listen to
have
our
our
don't li
differences.
in our early episodes were rough. So anyway, moving on. You guys are going on a small tour in April. Are you guys excited to hit the road?
It's yeah, it's actually start of April, and so it's not next week but the week after. Um, but yeah, really excited. It's been well.
Touring is always welcome.
Yeah, but it's been a long time. We did a couple of support tours last year, which were great. But it's been quite a while since we did. It was 2022 for the album release. Basically, that was the last time we did a proper full headline tour. So it's just 5 dates this time around. So it's just a bit of a short one, but it'll be really nice to get out and do some gigs.
Yeah.
Kind of maybe try out some of the new.
I love it. That's the best. Like that is the best part, to be honest. Of it all is that it's all for that, the live show or gig.
Yeah.
Any pre-show rituals before going on stage?
Warm-ups.
Yeah, I'm the only one. Well, actually, me and Alex do, and then you guys were like, maybe we should do something.
Yeah.
Because Jordan is always the same. Like he's by far the most energetic on stage. Like he's like going all over the place, like headbanging, and well, you guys both, and then they always come off stage like, oh my god, like the next day just like crippled. It's just like you need to start doing some neck stretches before.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see if you guys implement that this time around. But
I'm
yeah,
definitely. You know what it is? Yeah, you did inspire me the last time around. I think I'm gonna at least warm up a bit, especially if it's a cool venue, because there's nothing worse than just being like, I'll be fine. You'll have a pint, and then you'll go on stage and you're like, my hands are actually really cold. And then it takes the songs to kind of warm up. You can feel them like cracking.
Yeah, so I normally do some vocal warm-ups. Probably other thing for me is like if I haven't gigged in a while, I normally write out all of our lyrics like by hand, just to make sure I still know them. Like stuff like that. But
you've
nothing
never,
too elaborate.
touch wood, you've never forgotten lyrics live before?
I definitely have.
Have you?
Yeah. Yeah. I just played it off clearly really
just
well.
shows how much I pay attention.
Yeah.
It happens. It's gotta happen. I mean, everyone has brain farts.
Yeah. Just sing the other verse, it's all good. We'll just make it up. But yeah, so I'd like to just kind of have a process of kind of going through and making sure I still know everything. But yeah, nothing too crazy. I think like probably we're quite lucky in the sense that like we do like get to. I know it's like in these days it's kind of a lot of like maybe like short tours like a few times a year, but we do quite a lot of like a fair amount of gigs.
Yeah.
So I kind of feel like the more you do, almost the less pre-gig ritual you need, because you're kind of in the swing of it already.
Right. So you guys are playing Radar Festival in July, right? I've actually never heard of that one. And I've heard of a bunch of other festivals over in the UK. Have you guys played other festivals in the past?
So yeah, we have probably the biggest one that we played was Bloodstock, but that was as Zero.
Mm-hmm.
So as Giant Walker, obviously not so much because there was a good couple of years of really happening, especially in terms of festivals and stuff. So I would say Radar is probably the biggest one that
we're going to play.
We are going to play as Giant Walker. It's relatively new. To be fair, ironically enough, it started in Guildford, which is actually where we're currently based. But it's just the last 2 years, like basically since COVID,
moved to Manchester.
But yeah, really looking forward to.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
So I don't think you have come to the States, right? You have not come to the States. If you
Did
did have the opportunity to come to the States, though, are there any American bands you would love to tour with?
That is a good question. We would love to come to the States. Funny enough, we had a guy who's on his honeymoon like to London from the US, who came to like one of our gigs.
Oh yeah,
what a legend!
Yeah,
like mid honeymoon, like coming to our shows. But we got quite it's a common comment of like, you guys need to come to the US.
it's easy to say
definitely on
though.
the bucket
It's
list,
easy to
but-
say. I mean, it definitely is on the bucket list, but yeah, there's so many things that need to line up for that. Just, I mean, first and foremost, financially, I guess.
Yeah.
But also finding
bands.
the right band to go out with.
And also like a good like it depends on how realistic we're being here as well, because it's like, okay, well, if I could go on tour with any band, like, then obviously I'm gonna choose like probably someone who's way too big that we're never gonna get to support. But like, yeah, if I was gonna just go wild, pretty, like,
I mean, you can dream. You can dream. Who would your dream band be to go on tour with?
For sure, I would say.
Who? Sorry, cut out.
Queens of the Stone Age, sorry. That for sure, that would be mine.
That was what I just said.
Oh, did you?
Stole my...
Well, it would be ours anyway, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Either that, or it would be... Yeah, no, it would be Queens of the Stone Age. Yeah. The impossible answer would be Soundgarden.
That's true.
The impossible answer.
Never happened, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Hey, everything's a possibility these days, right?
We just bring Cornell back from the dead.
Yep, gotta do it.
So we love hearing.
Sorry
about that. It's okay. We do love hearing stories from the road. Do you have any crazy stories from touring and being on the road that you'd like to share with us?
Are you gonna say the Rio Ferdinand one?
Oh my god! No, I mean
that wasn't that funny.
That one was pretty funny, but it's kind of like, I don't know.
It's probably irrelevant to US.
This is what I mean. It's quite funny. Do you? I don't. You probably don't. But do you guys follow or used to follow any football / soccer?
I mean, I'm not a huge soccer fan,
no,
but I know of soccer.
Yeah.
Well, basically, there was one moment where we were stuck in traffic. It was really bad, like just gridlocked, stuck. We just weren't moving anytime soon. And then basically there used to be a footballer or a soccer player that played for England like years ago. He was like one of the biggest, probably one of the biggest English players to play, and he was called Rio Ferdinand. And I'm sitting in the car, and behind us, all I hear is that Rio Ferdinand? And like I look like into the car next to us, expecting to see like a Rio Ferdinand lookalike, and it is actually Rio Ferdinand. And he just looks at us like this, and then he's just like.
Simultaneously like start like staring over, and obviously he obviously clocked that we like realised that.
Obviously knew that he knew that we knew who he was, and he was like, oh god.
I think it was just the timing of it, because it would like literally just been sat in traffic for like 2 hours, we were all losing our minds. It was just like, that is...
it was like, in that exact moment, what's the most unlikely thing to happen in that exact moment, and that was probably it.
Yeah. But I don't know, like there's been a lot of good times, to be fair. Can't think of anything.
Crazy stories. Yeah, not really. I mean, there's definitely a few, but like Crazy Dave on the train that time.
Oh yeah, oh my god.
There was this, we played it wasn't really on tour, but it was after a gig, and it was before anyone could drive, and we were on the train home from London, and there was this guy who was clearly very, very drunk, comes onto the train and sits next to us all, just literally sits next to us all on the table. And he just starts telling us random stories about how he was in a bar fight when he was younger with like 6 Russian guys.
Yeah.
And just knocked them all out. And then he was like, and then he started practicing like pressure points on like Alex, the drummer. He was like, "Oh, so you put your thumb here," and like, and we were just like, "This guy is gonna kill one of us." We are not safe.
It was very bad. The funniest part actually was probably when he said he canoed down the Thames in a bin bag. It was just the most elaborate stories. So you're just like, what is going on? That was quite funny. Yeah, there's probably quite a few, but one of those things where it just all
We need to write them down. Tour diaries.
Tour diaries, yeah.
That would be good to write down like a diary and release it, from the road, or even like a video diary.
Yeah, we're just so crap at all of that, to be honest.
Vlog. Just vlog. Like I say, we should have just vlogged that situation. Like it would have just been insane.
So a bit of a random question now, hopefully a fun one. If Giant Walker's music was a Jack Black either character or movie, which would it be and why?
You're gonna have to answer that one.
I mean, the easy one's School of Rock. Dewey Finn. That's the easiest one, but I think the most is that the most realistic one? I mean, it makes the most sense. I think Dewey Finn, School of Rock, for obvious reasons.
It's a bit too straight up, though.
It's probably a bit too obvious, though.
It's got to be something a bit more underground, a bit more random.
Jack Black isn't underground, though.
That's true. Literally, you could think of an underground Jack Black iteration.
What was the one he was in? What was it, Mars Attack or something? He was in like an old film in like the 90s or something for like 5 minutes. He was this guy's brother. He gets vaporized like. So him,
That's
the guy who played. Is it Mars Attack? Oh.
Chris can find out for you.
I can. I know he was in an episode of The X-Files.
Yeah. Is he in Mars
Yeah,
Attack?
I mean, he's definitely well known for School of Rock. I'm trying to think of what other movies I've seen him in.
Yeah,
That's a
he was
tough
in Mars
question.
Attacks.
Yeah, he was. There you go.
Yep.
There you go. He's in it for like 10 minutes. He's some guy's brother, and then when the aliens invade, they just vaporize him. So that one, because our music vaporizes people. Or attempts to.
But then if you vaporize everyone, no one will be listening to it.
Metaphorically.
So just curious, what are your 9 to 5s?
If you don't mind sharing.
Yeah, so we're both pretty lucky. We both teach. So I teach singing, and Jamie teaches guitar, and Alex teaches drums. And that's kind of what we do.
Yeah. Just
Nice.
just luckily, yeah, just being more recently I've kind of started delving into doing functions and stuff. So like wedding gigs and corporate gigs and stuff in a separate kind of band.
Mm-hmm.
But I think yeah, just because it's what we're best at, it kind of makes sense to try and monetize in some way.
It's also like I think a lot of it is like trying to set up to be like the most flexible for the band
for the
stuff.
band, yeah.
Like and so with a lot of what,
if you have employers, you need to kind of persuade the employer.
Right.
So I've got a tour in a week. Please give me the time off. And it's like, well, yeah, if you cover this guy's shift and then you do this and blah 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 and crawl through these hoops.
I think
and when you just
got a bit sick of all of
yeah,
that,
it just doesn't work. Like if I can give anyone advice who is trying to do the band thing, it is just be self-employed. Just do something yourself, because then you answer to yourself.
Yeah.
And you can judge whether you can miss that week of pay to go and do elsewhere.
Yeah.
Obviously, sorry, go ahead.
No, that reminds me of a great story. So I lived in Tampa, Florida for a couple of years, and I worked for a cell phone carrier. And my supervisor told me a story. Have you guys heard of the band Maylene and the Sons of Disaster? So they're like a heavy Southern rock band, and they're based out of Tampa. And my supervisor tells me a story of, oh yeah, the guitarist from I think he played for Maylene, and he asked to go on short-term disability to go on Warped Tour with the band. And they of course said no, so he quit and went on tour. Yeah, that was it. Just reminded me of that story about how you have to ask for that permission.
Yeah.
But
Well,
that's great.
I think employers forget as well that, like, if someone says they've got a tour and there's an opportunity and they're a musician, then regardless of whether they say yes or no, they're probably going to take it.
Yeah.
The opportunity,
Right.
they'll phone in. You know, sometimes through fear of not getting the time off, they'll just call a sickie and they'll be like, "Oh, I can't come in today. Sorry." Yeah, I think COVID's a convenient excuse now, I guess, for people who want to get some time off and go on tour. But
that's
not an extended amount of time. But...
No, maybe not.
That's more exciting than ours. I mean, Jess said, she works at the thrift store, and I do quality assurance for software development, which is as fun as it sounds.
I'm interested.
She works from home though, so I mean,
I do work from home. Yeah.
Jealous.
I still have to leave the house.
Yeah.
Even the house is definitely overrated.
Overrated?
Yeah. Unless it's
sometimes.
If it can be on your terms, then I think it's always good. But if it's not on your terms, then yeah.
You do end up going a bit stir crazy at times. I mean, my wife will come home and like she's ready for the weekend. She just wants to stay home, and I'm like, I gotta get out of here. I'm like, I at least got to bring the car through the car wash or something. Just get me out of the house.
That's what's to be fair, that's what's quite good about, like, we've kind of quite lucky to have this space is like a converted garage, so it kind of feels at least like you're leaving.
Yeah, you need to leave the house to get there, but I'm very much a cave dweller. I could sit in the dark and play games and just
not leave,
mong out,
do
nothing for weeks, and then finally see the sunlight and definitely be deficient.
I know for me it depends on the time of year. Like in the wintertime, I'm kind of a hermit. And then when the weather warms up, I'm like, I need to go out and go hiking and all this other stuff and hit up all the shows I can that are like, small festivals and all that, if I can. But wintertime just kind of stinks.
It does. It really does.
Yes.
It's just like fully kind of getting to the end of like.
You would hate living in the UK. I'll just tell you that now.
Yeah, but the weather might be similar, like there.
No, I mean, come on. Do you guys are you guys in areas where the weather's quite nice most of the time, like in summer?
I'm in Wisconsin, so I'm in the Midwest, and there's snow on the ground right now, and it's March, so.
Same. Yeah, I'm in upstate New York. I'm actually in just outside of Syracuse in a town called Liverpool. So yeah, we just got dumped a bunch of snow yesterday. So and then we're known as like one of the most cloudy and snow heavy populated cities in the US. So I hate it here. But we're trying to move back south, but I would imagine that it was I like to imagine that Liverpool, New York was like, maybe it was seen like how gray and cloudy it was, and they're like, you know what this reminds us of?
Yeah. That's why it's called Liverpool, right?
Yeah, definitely is. Like, I mean, where we come from, Newcastle, even where we're situated now in Guildford, like the weather's all right most of the time.
In comparison
to Newcastle, which is literally just like someone coloured the entire place grey, and grey it shall stay. It does not change.
Right.
Often 2 days in summer.
Yeah, you got like
sun just peers through the clouds just a little bit.
Since we were talking about where me and Chris are from, we always like to ask people, especially UK people, if they can tell that we are from different places. Like, do we have a different accent?
Yeah.
I should have done that first, and then I could have been like, where am I from? No.
Well, I wouldn't be able to tell you where you guys are both from, but I can definitely tell an accent difference. Whereas, like, I think, I wonder if that's just because I'm in a situation regularly where people are asking me where I'm from, Even in the UK, like because we're situated in the south, there's a lot of school, like some of the students and stuff, if they're in school and they haven't been exposed to many accents yet, they're always like, "Where are you from?"
Yeah.
So I'm always just like the north, because I'm like Newcastle, and they're like, "Where's Newcastle?"
Yeah.
I'm like, it's in Middle Earth, to be honest.
Middle Earth, yes. Well, I
Is
think
there anything?
Go
What
ahead,
were you gonna
Chris.
say, Jeff?
Go ahead, Chris.
God, rude. No, is there anything else you'd like to tell the listeners? Any message you'd like to send anyone listening
or watching?
If you've made it this far, then drop a comment below and say what.
like is that the yeah?
What you
The punchline.
I don't know. What question can we ask?
I just think if you're watching and you haven't heard any of our music, go and check out a song. If you had to introduce one song to a listener who had never heard us before, what song would you choose?
Well, it depends on when they're listening, because if the new album is out.
Off the first album. If you had to get someone into the band who had never heard the band before.
I'd probably normally just go with the Fact and Fiction, to be honest.
Really? Okay.
What would you say?
Katoomba, maybe.
Okay. One of those two.
I felt like he had a different answer.
Yeah.
What you heard about it.
Yeah. Because we honestly, to be serious, like any reaction is welcome, because I would probably much rather someone absolutely hate the song than kind of like, it was okay.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Because at least they've had a strong reaction to it, and it's disgusted them, and they've like, I can't believe that. How dare they write a song like that?